I declare that there is no God worthy of worship except the one only true God, and I declare you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the messenger of God. Then he becomes a Muslim. Look at it, and you can trace the plagiarisms from the Old Testament, King James Version, and various other things. You can look at the contradictions and mistakes and discrepancies because of human being trying to claim revelation. Scripture in the name of God, which is a forgery. We know 49 of them by name today, the extent of which remains available. A little bit here, a little bit there, hide out. So what is become evident that people throughout times, and especially in Christianity with the examples, they're trying to forge writings and say this is from God when it's not. The Quran actually says this, woe to those who write the books with their own hands and says from God. Woe to those for what they write, what they am thereby. So historically it is evident that people are forging scripture in the name of God, and they're getting away with it because they're gaining followers as well. And your Orthodox church fathers had to write volumes against these heretical groups. They consider themselves heretics, not representing true Christianity. So what becomes historically clear and evident that people are tampering, forging, inventing, adulterating, and say something is from God when it isn't. So it happens because of people's own doctrinal affiliation. Those people, they were often writing this because they didn't believe in the physical crucifixion of Christ. There were certain groups, the Basilidians, for example, or others, they didn't believe Christ died. In fact, they wrote, the accounts are available to us now, Christ is sitting on the tree, on a branch, and is smiling and laughing. And the wrong man they're crucifying. Say, look, they got the wrong man, they're crucifying him wrong. And Christians didn't at large knew about this until these were discovered and published and translated, that there were only Christians who actually believed in that. And rather instead they started accusing the Islamic theologians and historians, look, you invented Christ not being crucified and so on and so forth. And what the Quran is saying, this was a well-attested rumor that he was crucified, and you can see that there are people who didn't believe he was crucified. And so the reasons why people distort or invent scripture is because of their own particular affiliation with something, right? They don't like what's there in the scripture, and they change it. They modify it, they add books, take away books, they alter books and so on. So in line with all these different scriptures all around, how do we know which one is the truth from God? When it comes to the Quran, the question that you gave, the Quran actually gives you certain criterion. Okay? It tells you a book from God must demonstrate and provide evidence it's from God. It should have hallmarks, it's from God. Okay? It should not contradict within itself. It should not have any errors, discrepancies, inconsistencies. And the Quran gives additional falsification tests that if it wasn't from God, you should be able to bring something like it. Because it's a product of, in your value judgment, a human being or a group of human beings or from Satan or whatever, other than God. If it's something from other than God, you can match something like it. Any literature, for example, can be imitated. Shakespeare can be imitated. Beethoven's music can be imitated. ChatGPT, just ask it. It will imitate a Shakespeare sonnet, for example. So the Quran, having this falsification test given, and stood the test of time. For all this year, 1445 years, and still people are failing. So if you were to go and search on the internet, you will see lots of websites by atheists, critics of Islam, Christians. They say, oh, there you go, Quranic contradictions, this one there. And if you were to look at the Muslim responses back and forth, it becomes obvious that list gets narrower to a point you're only dealing with one or two, and you need to know about a little bit of detailed nuance of Arabic language. And when you know the language, it's not even a contradiction. So why is it that people are failing even with deliberate effort, collective effort by missionary bodies which are being funded by multi-billion and $2 billion industries to combat the rise of Islam, for example, and they're failing? Why is it that we find the attempts of saying, oh, I have imitated chapter of the Quran? Because Quran says, produce a book like it in the Arabic language. like the Quran, or 10 chapters like it, or one chapter like it, by only 3 lines. And the attempts are there. Even Muslim laity are saying, but here is your faulty attempt because of X, Y, and Z. We have to go to our scholars who can do that. So if it can stand the test of time, then one needs to critically ask oneself, what else do I need to confirm that the book is from God or not? Because I can see it has the divine hallmark. I expect it to have internal contradictions because it talks about history, natural phenomena, talks about the prophecies in the future, and it's somehow free from all these mistakes. I mean, it predicts between 2 superpowers. What's going to happen to them? One of them is defeated, but it says within 3 to 7 years or 9 years, they're going to be victorious again. And this happens in history. How does one make this kind of prediction? Because it's not something that, you can think about it because when you have 2 superpowers and so on and so forth. Or thinking about, like imagine I said, you will never be able to remember my name, Mansur. Okay? He knows my name, you know my name. She will remind you every time. But if I made a claim, you will never remember my name, even if she asked what's my name, you said, you would say, well, something has to be physically done to my brain cells for me not to know, right? If no one influences me, I would know. I write it down, I will say it, I will record it, I will ask my friends to remind me. There's no way. But if I make a prediction like this, and this happens in your life until, you live for another 100 years or something, or 80 years, right? And you're never able to recall my name, she will say, something is strange here. Why is it that what's preventing me from recalling this name? According to he said, he has some extraordinary ability or unknown information from the unseen. The Quran talks about many things. One example is a particular individual called, his nickname is Abu Lahab. There's a chapter in the Quran says he will, as well as his wife, because of their arrogant disbelief, they will go to hellfire. They'll be carriers of fire, wood of hell, and so on. This man lived for more than 10 years after this particular revelation was given. He could have easily just come out without believing. You see? You don't need to believe it. You can come to the people and say, I declare that there is no God worthy of worship except the one only true God. And I declare, you, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the messenger of God. Then he becomes a Muslim. He goes to paradise because of God's promise and guarantee. Because of, if you become a Muslim and then you die in that state, Islam would have been dismantled then and there. 10 years, he remains an enemy of Islam, even as a hypocrite. Something outwardly saying I'm a Muslim, he didn't say that. So that shows you some, information of the unknown is known to this individual giving the revelation. So this is just one or two examples saying how we can be sure the Quran is indeed from God. Because any Tom, Dick and Harry can come along and say, this book is from God, that book is from God. This is the Quran, by the way, right? Yeah, so if we cannot verify and scrutinize it, Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormons, right? Are we going to just believe in it just because he claims to have got it from the angels and so on and so forth? You can look at it and you can trace the plagiarisms from the Old Testament, King James Version and various other things. And you can look at the contradictions and mistakes and discrepancies because of human being trying to claim revelation. Any books like this which claims to be from God, you can analyze it. The Quran actually invites people to ponder it deeply and see if they can find a contradiction within it or a mistake within it. So that's why we say when we talk about the Quran is from God, it provides its own evidence, positive evidence, as well as falsification tests to falsify it, making it easy for anyone saying, okay, fine, is there anything in a falsification test that I can apply, and then if it doesn't stand the test, then I know for sure it's not from God. Imagine this book says, if you find something within it which says God is saying that Jesus is not a messenger, I'm just making this up, right? And you find it there, then you know where you're going to find it. Why another statement? Interestingly, when the Quran says, if they ponder on the Quran with care, لو كان فيهما. Now this is the other ayah. If it wasn't from God, they would find many اختلافا, many contradictions. The word that is used is اختلافا in Arabic, meaning discrepancies, right?
So that line though.
You can ignore the heckless. This is another one.
Excuse me, it also question.
So when we look at this in deep pondering, one can say, but there's another word called ikhtilaf in the Quran. And the Quran says, think about it literally. You will not find more than one. You would not find. Okay. You just come here this side. Come this side.
Quite good.
They're not interested. Thank you.
Yes, they are. Come on. Oh, no.
He's a heckler.
Yeah, he does something.
He's a heckler. He's going to take away from the
Not your uncle. No.
Okay, I'm going to continue speaking to you if you don't mind. Right? It's okay.
Antisocial.
Can I continue?
Disorder is mad.
All right. So when the Quran says, see how he's going to overtake the conversation? How rudely? So when the Quran says, if it wasn't from God, you would not find more than one. You would not find many.
I have.
Ikhtilafan.
You see,
so you can say,
prove it.
You can say,
I'm making a claim.
There is another word called ikhtilafan, and the Quran says you will not find more than one ikhtilaf. Guess what? That word form, that particular word form, ikhtilafan, only occurs once. Only occurs once in the Quran. So even someone who thinks they are smart and say, look, but I found another word called ikhtilafan, so the Quran is false. They cannot do that. It's like this example. The Quran talks about the fate of a disbeliever, in which when in the hellfire, we believe disbelievers who are arrogant, they deserve to go to hellfire. When they're in hellfire, when they're punished with the fire, God says, as often as their skin is roasted through, God will recreate.
That is the Quran. And that has already made me go astray. Yes? That Allah has guided him. Not me. You see? That's how you catch them.
You see how irrelevant. Sorry,
that is Quran or not?
I mean, look, clearly, I haven't read the Quran. No, I'm giving an example to ponder. I haven't read the Quran, so I don't know if it's contradiction.
That's how you do.
You need to.
Why do
you prefer to invite a clown like him?
No, this clown.
Do you want to see some YouTube videos of this clown?
It's really credible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know you've taught us alive.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But can I finish this example?
No.
We'll make this not example. What I'm saying is, we invite you to read the Quran. Absolutely, this is the introduction. But the point I was making is this, about this hellfire punishment upon the skin being roasted.
If you go and read,
a clever, smart Alex White thinks, you know what? When we are going to be punished in hellfire and our skins are burned through, we will no longer feel pain anymore. Do you know why?
God would do this.
Do you know why?
Creation.
Because these smart individuals, in their so-called smartness, they think when the skins are burnt,
when would that be?
We're talking about really third-degree burn.
He said,
do you know what happened?
Allah would find many times.
Do you mind allowing me to finish? You're interrupting very like a very uncivilized way. Like hello.
The only one who did it.
So the only one. Do you know the pain, brother?
How do you know?
Do you know the pain receptors are in the skin?
Analogy pilot, right? He's giving the own example of working.
So when the skins are burnt properly, even if you were to put a needle through, blade through, comes the other way, you would not feel pain. That is when the skin is totally burnt. But if the Quran says, but you'll be feeling pain in the hereafter, then they will say, look, we have outsmart God, even if we're in hellfire.
Already know what we're going to say.
But do you know what the Quran says? The Quran says, as often as the skin is roasted through, God will recreate her skin to challenge anyone. And again, like this is a cycle. Now we know why they played. Because New skin, new nerve endings, new pain receptors. They will constantly feel the pain.
So I'm afraid from this.
Yeah.
So one, I mean,
This is for you.
free. I think one, I'm not. I imagine back in this time, people's skin is burned. So that's not like a new insight. I mean, imagine like it's not like a proof.
Now, this is one example of where the Quran. No, what I'm saying, the Quran could have simply made something which is not like that. But this is one example of many. Because you don't have time, I'm not giving you one after the other. I'm giving an example to think about it. When there are mistakes in the previous revelations, mistakes, for example, how the human embryo, human beings, is created by the menstrual blood, as it says in the Bible, for example, in the Old Testament. The Quran doesn't copy those mistakes.
But it does.
Right? The Quran doesn't copy those mistakes.
But
if you are willing to talk about it, we can. But because you have to go, go and reflect and think about it. But this is what we're saying. The salvation of every individual lies, one thing, to worshiping God alone, without ascribing a partner to God, whether it be a son of God or a daughter of God or a wife of God, whatever, worshipping God alone and accepting the final messenger that God has sent, because through them you will be fulfilling the will of God. The final messenger has been Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad from Arabia, who brought the Quran, and is established through proof and evidence.
The book of
He is a prophet of God, and this is book of God.
But how do you know?
So your role, our role would be to confirm that this is the case.
What? I am in you.
Okay, you take care. Okay, you take care.
Anyway, well done. Hey, man.
Yeah. How much is it paying you?
What is it?
How much are you paying each other?
Thousands. Not a lot. I remember that. What's my question? What is